My name is Nasser Azimi. I'm a senior partner of a local software company called Teranomic. And today, joining me is Matt Kixmoeller from Pure Storage. In a way of a brief introduction, I'm currently a senior partner, but in my former life, I was a deputy state CIO for the state of California. But I also had the pleasure of serving in various capacities as an agency information officer. I served as a CIO of several departments, a CTO, a DBA, a programmer, and practically every acronym you can think of in the context of our classifications, some of which we invented ourselves, such as the AIO, which stands for the Agency Information Officer. Matt, on the other hand, is VP of Pure Storage, and he's basically a storage veteran, so to speak, with extensive experience in essentially not only involved in product design, but also in creating the vision behind storage technologies and having a good sense of the market base in order to guide the companies that he worked with to essentially produce new products and introduce them to the market. So just to get into the presentation, how many of you know really what big data stands for? No one. A couple of you. How do you define big data? Not to put you on the spot.
It's a large storage of data in a data center somewhere. It could be anywhere in the world. It's accessible by computer anywhere in the world.
That's a good definition. Basically, in so many terms, big data involves having access to more data than you know what to do with. And many of us have been in that particular predicament, whereby we have access to internal data, external data, but not necessarily the means to to have all the tools and capabilities to leverage it to do what needs to be done to get our job accomplished. So in that context, I wanted to introduce you to some of the personal experiences that I had in state government with regards to the big data scenarios and the movement that is essentially driving big data in the context of the utilization. So I'm sure throughout the entire session you've heard about big data movement with regards to uniform data access across business lines. In the context of essentially making data available across business lines, there are a number of initiatives underway that include virtual and physical consolidation of technologies, which essentially means that you're essentially building the capacity to process more and more data to get things done within your respective organization. There are a lot of initiatives involving modernizing legacy systems and integrating them into the various platforms that we utilize to access data and structure it correctly. There are initiatives to make sure that the data within the big data context is secure and available on a 24/7 basis. And of course, in order to make data available, there are a number of initiatives driving online and mobile devices to essentially give us access to the data that we need. That collectively represents a strong business case for us to build a platform to make big data work for our respective organization. Some of the big data necessities are to make sure that they are essentially, your data strategies are aligned with your business goals and objectives. In that context, we also need to make sure that our data needs are clearly identified in the context of the objectives that need to be met. So many times we develop technologies initiatives and we don't necessarily pay that much attention to the overall needs of the data that drive our goals and objectives. In that context, it's absolutely imperative that data is effectively defined and well understood all the way up and down the organization in order for the outcome to be applicable to your relative business organizations. One of the major necessities in accomplishing that is, of course, sponsorship from executive level all the way down to the practitioners within the business organization. And in that context, executive sponsorship needs to be involved. We all need to take ownership of the results that are to be produced because of the big data impact on our respective organizations. And in that context, some of the risks that need to be avoided is the multiple personalities that we generally end up dealing with regards to the various siloed data sources within our organization. Some of the remedies with regards to making sure that data sources are not coming in various shapes and forms is, of course, planning and managing the use of the respective data that is required by our respective organizations. Some of the traditional scenarios involve standardizing your technology and essentially aligning all of the standardized components within your respective organizations so that there is uniformity across the board. Retiring old technology is another strategy that should be leveraged in order to make sure that new technology is used with appropriate capacity to process the required scenario within your organization. That all essentially culminates into automated processes and workflows, reduced overhead, and essentially creating the capacity to do more with less. These underlying technologies should be implemented within a repeatable and standard environments. By repeatable means that when you develop a solution, it should be essentially deployed in various aspects of your organization so that it can be utilized over and over by various entities within your organization. There are three approaches to making sure that big data is identified and deployed within a very low-risk environment. In that context, modeling data is very critical and essentially will give you the very first flavor with regards to how effectively big data can impact your business organizations. There should be an absolute use of methodologies such as PMBOK and Agile for delivery upon the underlying business objectives that are part of the program, and of course modernization to acquire fast and secure and reliable solutions should definitely be part of that mix. The net result of making sure that the approach is solid and effective will migrate majority of organizations from the traditional situation of investing too much time and effort in maintaining technology systems and relying heavily on programming staff to the more versatile environment that essentially aligns the technology solutions with that of an effective business direction to manage the underlying business priorities and direction. All of that results in making sure that customers are happy and executives are getting the support that they need in order to collectively accomplish their responsibilities. Very quickly, before I turn it over to Matt, as I mentioned, Teranomic is a local software company. We have branches in some of the western states in the United States. We just launched the branch office in Mexico and in Italy to support some of our customers in Europe. And there are some of the examples of the departments that we worked at. We have a series of commercial products that we market to state and local government, but also offer them as software as a service. And we also have a private cloud operation locally within Raging Wire. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who will basically give us a good synopsis of big data within the context of Pure Storage.
All right, thanks, Nasser. So if you look at what Teranomic does, they help integrate big data sources and bring data together. And when you bring data together, oftentimes you then need to start analyzing and processing. And one of the key tools for modern data infrastructures is Flash. Flash is a technology that is dramatically changing the world of storage. And today I wanted to talk about how Flash can help accelerate analysis and flows of big data, but also just more generally how it can help across a wide variety of use cases within government agencies. So sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you don't have to be too complicated to explain some of the benefits. If you look at the little thing here on the right, across tons of different use cases within storage and consumer goods, it's replacing the big clunky hard drives of yesterday. 50 to 100 times better performance, 10x better in almost every dimension you care about in terms of size, power, cooling, weight, efficiency, etc. Who here has used Flash in your agency or deployed it in your environment? Anyone? Just a hand or two. Who here has felt the impact of Flash in their personal lives? A lot more of you, I bet. And it's an interesting technology. Oftentimes technologies will start out kind of in the corporate world, government world, and work their way into the consumer world. In this case, Flash is actually the opposite. As personal consumers, we've all seen the benefit, whether it be digital cameras, readers, how we consume media, how we take advantage of personal handheld computing, and of course our cell phones. All of us are Flash consumers, and in fact, if you look at the Flash fabs in general, 90+% of the Flash in the world goes into these consumer devices. So it's a bit of a frustrating experience sometimes when we have these great immersive Flash-fueled experiences in our personal lives, and when we go to work, this symbol is what we see more often than not, the wait symbol. And if you look at our kind of corporate, enterprise, government computing experiences, there's a lot of frustration on the personal end user side about your computing experience. There's a lot of limitations in what you can achieve in terms of analyzing data, the kinds of computing, the kinds of queries you can do in your databases, et cetera. And so if you look at Flash, it's starting to really transform businesses, industries, et cetera, that are taking advantage of it. If you look at some of the, not only devices in the world, but the web experiences in the world, Google, Facebook, et cetera, they've largely moved to Flash-fueled or even 100% Flash-powered, in some cases, data centers. And we're starting to see that ripple across the public sector as well. And so it depends a lot on what agency you're in, but folks are starting to ask themselves, okay, well, what can Flash do to my environment? How can I take advantage of it to deliver a result? And that result, like I said, will vary depending on what you're doing. It might be a better experience for your end users, citizens, et cetera. It might just be driving down the cost through increased efficiency of storage. Might be better learning, might be better response times, et cetera. And so people are looking at Flash and saying, look, how can I dramatically move the needle in terms of what I can achieve in terms of real results? One of our customers, unfortunately not a California customer, but a public sector customer, is the city of Davenport, Iowa. And they're a good example of a municipality who started with a little bit of Flash, but very quickly looked across their entire environment to see how they could leverage it for success. The first use case for them was actually the VDI environments running in their fire engines and police cars, where they were having such performance issues they literally couldn't get the information to help people run mission critical services. They brought in Pure Storage, they transitioned that environment over and solved that problem immediately. But then they started to look across the entire city, and they basically had a relatively small storage environment. They're able to move all their core information databases over to it, their core services like messaging, et cetera. And pretty soon, they were 100% Flash-fueled government. And so obviously a small city, but one that really saw the benefits of not only performance, but efficiency from the Flash platform. So there's three interesting trends that we think are actually going to fuel this adoption of Flash in public sector and enterprise faster than people expect. The first is consumer expectations. Anybody notice a lot of the brouhaha over the national insurance website that came up over the last few months? So it's a good example of that crossover of, as users, what do we expect? We pretty much expect Google-like services for everything we do. And so when we come to a service and we get a bad response time, if we get something that's subpar, the blame starts to be thrown around immediately. And so that crossover is happening everywhere. When we talk to enterprise CIOs, they feel the same thing. Their employees are frustrated that their enterprise IT services aren't as good as the ones that are being delivered for free in their home lives. And the exact same expectation is crossing over to the government. Big data, huge opportunity. It's what this conference is all about. Some of the best workloads and use cases for data are Flash-fueled these days. And Flash can really change the game in terms of what you can do in a data environment. Big data is probably one of the bigger misnomers, i.e. the term big. It certainly can be large at times, but I saw a survey recently from, I believe it was Gartner, talking about just the average size of big data information stores. And the average size was under about 30 terabytes, which, still sounds big, but it's not as enormous as sometimes people think. When you look at big data, another definition I like is the V's. And there was an industry definition out there around big, meaning not only the volume, i.e. the size of the data, but the variety and the velocity. And if you look at the workflows around big data, there often is a big element. I have to be able to search across a lot of information, do queries and joins across them, et cetera. But the variety really matters. And if you look at a lot of existing disk storage technologies, they do okay if you're accessing the same data sequentially, streaming it off the disk. But when you start to have random access, i.e. you're accessing this piece, then that piece, doing interesting queries across all of them, many of our band-aids in computing, the caches of the world, et cetera, start to break down because you can't cache randomness. And so when big data becomes not only very large, but the access patterns and the queries you're asking become very random in nature, that taxes the information systems even more. And then finally, velocity is a key thing. In many of these big data environments, there's a pipelining of information. New data comes in, it's loaded very fast. Old data comes out. There's a lot of movement of data in addition to querying and access of data. And so when you're having to move data very fast, that speed at which you load new information and bring it into your systems becomes critical. One of our more popular verticals is in the financial space, where hedge funds, finance companies, et cetera, are doing analysis of trading data. And oftentimes they'll have big reams of data coming in that they have to analyze, let's say between Asian market close and US market open. Well, they have a fixed period of time, they have to move a lot of data, they have to analyze a lot, and the speed of flash allows them to totally change what they're able to do. This is the kind of vertical or the area where some of the most fun success stories come out. I think the personal record we've seen is a customer who had a long batch query job that took over 3 months, having that complete in about 45 minutes. I'll say that's not typical, but we all the time hear customer stories of people that literally had jobs that would take hours to days that complete in minutes. And it gives you a sense for the different types of questions you can ask, the different types of analysis you can do on the same data you've already got when you can bring flash into the equation. All right, and then the third dimension is the rise of mobile. And if you think about this, it's obvious, but more and more of us as consumers are using mobile to access everything. And those access devices are fundamentally just that. They're access devices to centralized services. So as mobile becomes more important, those mobile devices are ultimately tethered to data centers, and the experience that you can deliver for a mobile user is tethered directly to the experience that comes out of your data center. And so that's all about response time. It's the latency. It's the milliseconds that stand between you and that answer that you can deliver for the customer that defines the response time on their mobile device. And let's face it, when you're mobile, you're even more acutely kind of focused on what that response time looks like than when you're at your PC and might have other things you can multitask for. And so as more and more consumer expectations bleed over, as more and more people want to access these devices mobily, or these services mobily, that response time quotient and that need for flash just rise. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how pure storage in general and just the flash industry can help you guys take advantage of flash in your environments. So as the initial kind of show of hands showed, although flash has been dramatically adopted in consumer computing, there's not been a huge dramatic shift towards it in the enterprise or in the public sector yet. And so why is that? Why is adoption so low of flash to date? There's really been three key issues. So the first issue, and by and large the most obvious one, is cost. If you look at buying enterprise disk storage today, you're probably paying for more performance storage somewhere between $1 and $5 a gigabyte usable. If you look at flash, historically, it's literally been 4 or 5 plus times that much more. So 10, 20, 30 plus dollars per gigabyte. The second issue is scale. Many of the initial approaches to flash were inherently very small. Flash cards you put in your servers, flash devices that were designed to accelerate a single database or a single application. They didn't feel or look like real scalable storage arrays. And in the world of big data, size matters. And so the kind of workload you can get on a device, it ultimately boils down to the size of the device you can bring to bear. And then finally, complexity. Many of the first implementations of flash really required a very high pain in terms of transition of technology. Either totally relaying out your applications to use host-based flash, or adding flash to existing disk arrays, which made them more complex. One more thing to worry about: cache hit ratios, flash tiering policies, et cetera. And so a combination of these things really conspired to not having a ton of adoption of flash in enterprise computing and in public sector computing. And so Pure Storage's goal in life, we basically were founded about 4 years ago, was to deliver an enterprise storage platform built on flash that fundamentally solved these these challenges. Our product is called the Pure Storage Flash Array. You can see it hiding over there on the left. But it is a 100% flash storage array. Think about it like a traditional EMC NetApp enterprise class storage platform, but designed from the ground up for flash memory. 100% MLC flash memory to deliver consistent performance under a millisecond. A key focus for us is driving down the cost of flash. And so the flash array uses inline data reduction technologies, dedupe and compression, to be able to pack more data on the same amount of flash. That, combined with a low-cost MLC flash, can drive the cost down to the point where in most cases it's actually less than performance disk storage. We've worked very hard to make it plug compatible with the infrastructure you have. Fiber channel and iSCSI type interfaces, where for traditional enterprise storage environments, it's literally a unplug one wire, plug this in, the rest of the stack doesn't have to change. And a real focus on all the software features that make that true. So not only the plug compatibility, but the snapshots, replication technologies, et cetera, data management features that are necessary to plug into the existing deployments. And we believe something that's really an order of magnitude improvement. If you look at a lot of the improvements in storage over the years, things got 10% better here, or 15% better here, but they were very much step functions. For the same price, we believe we created something that's really an order of magnitude, 10 times faster, 10 times smaller, 10 times more efficient, and dramatically simpler than traditional disk. So sometimes, again, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you get a sense for what 100, 150 terabytes of production performance storage might have looked like in the disk era, literally refrigerators of spinning disk, and what it can look like in the flash era, something that looks a lot more like a microwave. And this is a picture, again, that's more of an example of what happens when you transition to flash. This is actually a large insurance company that moved their production kind of processing environment for new claims, big Oracle database, onto not only flash, but into virtualization at the same time. They were an environment that was trying to virtualize, and the last mile of virtualization for them was getting their databases virtualized. And so you can see the cutover there when they went from 20 plus millisecond response time to consistently under a millisecond. This is actually a graph from their initial testing of Pure, where in addition to transitioning, they pulled the power on one of our controllers, upgraded the software, and pulled out a drive and a cable and whatnot. You can see the essentially zero performance hit through those. And so the net, this customer was able to move their production virtualization analytics databases over to the VMware environment and see a huge improvement in performance. So how do you get there? We try to encourage people not to feel like they have to be all flash on day one. That's not realistic for a lot of customers. Some of our most progressive customers are, and it's amazing actually to see how fast that starts to happen. Counterintuitively, often some of the smaller agencies and smaller customers are the ones that can make the leap quickly. I showed you the city of Davenport earlier. Customers of that size, hospitals, et cetera, only run 1 or 2 arrays. And so the ability to switch over to an all-flash environment and get not only the performance benefits, but the efficiency benefits become quite tangible. But for larger customers, it generally starts with a path. And there's a path towards getting to be a flash-fueled environment. The place we like to encourage people to start is just to look for a few applications where performance really matters, where response time really matters. For a lot of customers, that tends to be their data environment, their analytics environment. That might be an area where bringing flash to drive more analytics in their environment can help a lot, but it's also a safe place to first test the platform and get to know flash and get to use flash. The second place we look is to say, look systematically around your assets, and for a lot of folks, the assets you have are basically your people and your data. And so if you can bring flash to make your people more efficient and your data more efficient, you can realize dramatic productivity gains for your organization. And then finally, there's an opportunity once you get comfortable with flash to really use it broadly in your data center. And as I said, a key initiative that's starting to kind of parallel the virtualization initiative over the past decade has been a flash initiative for customers to be able to roll out flash across their data center and get to a much broader level of efficiency to bring down both CapEx and OpEx costs there. So with that, let's pause and just go ahead and take questions from the audience.
Any questions from personally from the Teranomic perspective, we've had initiatives involving modernizing legacy applications, leveraging the traditional investments in older systems and combining them with some of the modern applications over the web. We've done a couple of initiatives over in health agencies. We've done a couple at CDCR. The common theme across all of them seems to be to essentially approach the big data scenario to not only access data within internal organizations, but also external to that respective department. The various phases of big data that I presented is a real dilemma in the context of how some agencies are attempting to serve their customers. For example, health and labor and some of the other sister agencies have similar constitutional base. They have similar customers. And in that context, they are capturing, what we found is that they are capturing a lot of different flavors of data and calling them differently as well. One of the big data dilemmas is just that, essentially curing that data, purifying it so that all agencies are looking at data and defining it in a common fashion because they have common clients between health programs versus employment programs and such. So that's been our experience, which is really the premise of the presentation that was assembled. There's definitely a lot of movement. These conferences are helping. Evolving technologies that make traditional expensive storage and communication platforms costly are now coming down in price. They're becoming faster and more efficient, which definitely fuels the movement towards big data and achieving that enterprise perspective on a statewide scale. Any other questions?
Yep, so the question was, does flash storage wear out? And certainly if you look at the early days of flash storage, one of the key concerns folks had was the number of write cycles. And one of the ways that flash is almost better than traditional disk in almost every fashion, but one way it's different is that you can only write cells so many times. And so that's one of the key challenges that basically Pure Storage has fixed with our software that runs inside our array, the Purity operating environment. A key part of that is just extending the life of the flash and being very smart about how we write data to the flash. And we do that in two ways. Number one, because we do data reduction, we reduce about 80% of the I/O that would have ever hit the flash to begin with, because we can store it as pointers instead of storing the same thing over and over and wearing out the flash. And then the other thing we do is we're just very careful in how we write to the flash, and we basically optimize that across the entire array. So put very simply, if you look at our devices, we believe they'll run, even if you run them at their absolute maximum performance, which nobody does, for 7 to 10 years. And so most deployments are in the range of 5 to 7 years. And we'll warrant them through that entire period. If you do manage to wear out the flash, we'll replace it at no charge. So we personally haven't had any problems with hackers or viruses. One of the advantages of our technology is that we also, I didn't mention it, but we have encryption built in. And so the array is actually always encrypting all the data all the time without a performance penalty. And so if you're ever to, in the world of storage, we tend to worry more about physical breaches where, if there's an intrusion in the application, that's really the application's issue. But in the storage world, we worry about people, say, breaking into a data center or intercepting, ripping a drive out of the array and running off with it, or intercepting a drive when maybe one of them was being transitioned during a maintenance event. And so the way our array works is that basically you have to have a majority of the drives there, and if they're there, they all have a bit of the encryption key on them, and they can kind of self-decrypt the entire array. But if you're able to intercept a single drive, or if you're able to even intercept half the drives, then you wouldn't be able to access the array. And we've actually, one of our investors and a partner of ours is InQtel, who is a division of the US federal government, the intelligence community. And we've done quite a lot of work going through their security audits and actually developing security technologies for use within the US federal government. And so we've seen that, the benefits of that, kind of ripple down towards other government agencies and healthcare and other industries that care a lot about citizen and patient data.
Other questions?
You want to get revenue for flash drive. You've got that data stored on there, and
Yeah. So that's always an interesting topic, and we've met with folks that range from in levels of paranoia from where they will trust vendors to certify they've deleted data to they will leave one guy behind with a drill to drill through every drive and everything in between. And so on our array, first of all, from a one drive point of view, it's really not of a risk because of this encryption, and we also have a command that'll basically zero out the array, and we will provide certification that that's been done. When you want to go through the process of decommissioning the entire array, then again, we can come out and work through that process and basically both do that work and certify it for you and have you test that it's been completed. And there's a subset of folks in the world that have a one-way door policy where once it comes in, it never comes out, and we'll take care of destroying it ourselves. Thank you very much.
Okay, going once. All right. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's been one of our key design goals is we want to be just like additional existing storage platforms, just 10x better in every way. But aside from that, just from a compatibility perspective, the features you expect, the integration you expect, and we have an enormous integration lab testing with all third-party vendors, et cetera. All right. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, thank you.
We do have a booth, by the way, if you would like to come by and hear a little bit more about the product and check it out.